What follows is an original scripted audio drama produced by the Perimeter Broadcast. It is fiction, not a genuine emergency alert. This is KQWL 1620 AM, Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network, Tillamook County Perimeter, the Perimeter Broadcast. If you are hearing this transmission, emergency conditions are ongoing. The coast had fog this morning, the kind that pools in the low spots along the highway and makes the center line vanish about 10 feet ahead. School buses ran on schedule. The grocery in Wheeler opened at 7 with the same woman at the register, same coffee thermos on the counter beside her elbow, same morning. A dish rack beside a kitchen window in Bay City was still draining from breakfast when the first tone came through a receiver that had not been powered on in 3 years. The regional monitoring service used the word precautionary. That was 6 days ago. They have since withdrawn that word and replaced it twice. It is now Sunday, 8:43 in the evening Pacific time. I will be presenting the week in order. What I describe will not improve. What started Monday morning has not been explained. It is 11:40 a.m., Monday. The first report reached the cooperative's regional coordinator 12 minutes before it arrived at our relay office. A licensed amateur operator in Nehalem contacted the coordinator at 11:28 to report that his shortwave receiver, a unit he keeps tuned to maritime weather on a frequency shared with the fisheries coastal loop, had begun producing structured audio on a channel not assigned to any known broadcaster in the region. The audio was not static. It was not interference from a power line, a motor, or a grounding fault. It was formatted content, a spoken voice reading what the operator described as station scheduling information, program names, each followed by a time slot designation, each followed by a 6-digit internal reference number. The voice was neutral in tone, unhurried in pace, and remarkably consistent in rhythm across the full duration he observed. He could not identify it, but judged it was not synthesized. He said it sounded like a person reading from a sheet they had read aloud many times before. The reference numbers matched nothing in the cooperative's allocation tables, nothing in the Regional Monitoring Service's published directory, and nothing in the Fisheries Service's coastal frequency list. The cooperative's coordinator noted the call, assigned it a low priority tag, and asked the operator to record 30 seconds if the signal continued. It continued. By 11:40, the operator had captured 4 minutes of clean audio. The coordinator forwarded a summary to our relay office and to the Fisheries Monitoring Service. His routing form, which I copied by hand before it was collected later that week, closes with one note: possible spurious decode, low priority, monitor and log. One receiving station had reported the signal. The frequency in question should have carried nothing but silence. It is 12:18 p.m., Monday. The Fisheries Monitoring Service responded within 50 minutes of receiving the forwarded summary, which is notably quick for their office. Their standard acknowledgement window for a non-emergency referral is 4 hours. The duty officer confirmed that no vessel, buoy, or coastal repeater in their network was transmitting formatted voice content on or near the reported frequency. He pulled their automated transmission logs for the previous 72 hours and found nothing that could account for what the Nehalem operator described. He then contacted the Polar Research Logistics Body's liaison desk because the frequency in question sits within a band nominally assigned to that body for ionospheric study purposes. Their nearest active installation is located on a continental landmass in the far southern hemisphere. The liaison desk confirmed no scheduled transmission on that frequency for the current calendar month. Their logbook showed the installation had been in maintenance standby since September 9th, and that the facility's primary antenna array had been physically disconnected from the transmission chain for routine inspection. The duty officer's written assessment, which I have in a faxed copy dated 12:17 p.m. Monday, is 3 sentences long. I will read the operative sentence: almost certainly local interference misidentified as formatted content. Recommend equipment grounding check at reporting station. He classified the event as Category 2 in their system, which means no further action is required unless a second independent report is received within 48 hours. A second report was received within 90 minutes. At 12:18 on Monday afternoon, one receiving station had reported. The duty officer's assessment would remain the Fisheries Monitoring Service's official position for approximately 6 hours before being quietly withdrawn and replaced with language I will read when I reach that point in the chronology. It is 1:04 p.m. Monday. I need to describe what happened at our own relay office in this window carefully, because it is where my direct involvement in the matter begins, and where the first discrepancy between my account and the official record will later surface. At 12:43, I received the cooperative's forwarded summary by landline telephone. Standard procedure requires that I log the call, note the time, and file a physical copy in the scheduling cabinet in the back room. That cabinet holds program records that were never digitized, scheduling sheets going back more than 3 decades, internal reference numbers, transmitter maintenance tickets, shift handover notes, engineering specifications from technicians who retired before I started at this desk. A gray 4-drawer steel unit with a combination lock on the top drawer, positioned on the left side of the room beside the window. I logged the report at 12:44. Then, because the Nehalem operator's summary specifically mentioned scheduling data and 6-digit reference numbers, I decided to pull our own master schedule for the current week and compare. The top drawer held 6 manila folders, one for each broadcast day, Monday through Saturday, each containing a single typed sheet listing program names, time slots, and their assigned reference numbers. I confirmed all 6 folders were present. I confirmed the reference numbers on our Monday sheet did not match the ones the Nehalem operator had reported. They were not close. They were not transposed or offset by a fixed amount. They were entirely different sequences bearing no mathematical relationship I could identify. I closed the drawer, returned to the front desk, and continued the shift. At 12:44 p.m. on Monday, all 6 folders were in that drawer. I touched them with my own hands. I counted the tabs. That is the last verified moment at which I can confirm the complete contents of that cabinet from direct personal observation. I am stating it plainly because it will matter by Wednesday. It is 2:20 p.m. Monday. In the 75 minutes following my check of the cabinet, 2 additional reports reached the relay office through separate channels, neither of which passed through the cooperative's standard logging procedure. The first came from a retired electrician in Rockaway Beach who maintains a receiver rack in a corrugated shed behind his house. His middle unit, a set kept permanently tuned to the fisheries weather loop, had begun outputting spoken content that did not match the loop's known format or its familiar automated voice. He described what he heard as a human voice reading a program schedule in a calm and deliberate manner. He provided 5 of the 6-digit reference numbers by reading them very slowly over the telephone while I copied them onto the margin of my shift login pencil. They did not match the Nehalem operator's numbers. They did not match our own schedule's numbers. They were a third set entirely, sharing no apparent pattern with either. The second report came from a staff member at the Public Library District's branch in Manzanita. The library operates a small community shortwave listening station in its back room, 3 receivers on a shelf, a poster explaining radio propagation, headphones hanging from hooks on the wall, an educational installation for visitors and school groups. One of those receivers had been unplugged from its power source for 9 days, awaiting a wiring repair that had been approved but not yet scheduled. Its power cord was coiled neatly on the shelf beside it. The antenna lead had been disconnected at the back panel and capped with electrical tape. That unit was producing audio, faint but intelligible. The staff member held her telephone handset near the speaker grill, and I heard approximately 12 seconds of content before the line quality degraded past the point of usefulness. A neutral voice, steady in pace, reading what sounded like a weekly broadcast schedule. 3 receiving stations were now reporting the signal. The fisheries duty officer, when I called to relay the detail about the unpowered unit, asked me to confirm that detail twice. I confirmed it twice. He was silent for long enough that I checked whether the line had dropped. It had not. It is 4:35 p.m., Monday. By mid-afternoon, the cooperative's regional coordinator had received 2 further reports, both from licensed operators south of Tillamook proper. One was located in Pacific City, the other maintained a station near the Cape Meares overlook. The Cape Meares operator described the same characteristics every previous reporter had noted: formatted voice, scheduling data, 6-digit numbers, and added nothing new. The Pacific City operator, however, noted something none of the earlier reporters had mentioned or thought to mention. The voice was reading a schedule that included program titles he recognized, not from any current broadcast season, from prior years. He told the coordinator that one of the program titles matched a show this station, KQWL, had aired on Thursday evenings 5 years ago during the autumn season. That program ran for 14 weeks and was replaced in January of the following year. It has never been rebroadcast. Its scheduling data exists only in the physical files housed in our cabinet. It was never uploaded to any digital system, never copied electronically, never transmitted by any means other than the original broadcast itself. The reference number the Pacific City operator read back to the coordinator matched the number on our archived sheet for that program's original Thursday evening time slot. I confirmed this at 4:52 p.m. after pulling the relevant folder from the cabinet's third drawer, where long-term archives are stored. The folder was present, the sheet was present, the number matched exactly, digit for digit. 5 receiving stations were now reporting the signal. The coordinator changed his classification from low priority to active anomaly, multi-station confirmation, and placed a formal referral to the Regional Monitoring Services duty supervisor. His referral note includes one sentence I will quote. Content appears to contain verified historical scheduling data from at least one member station. That referral was received at 5:08 p.m. and acknowledged at 5:11. I sat with the archived sheet on my desk for several minutes after confirming the match. The program it described has not been spoken of in 5 years. Its name exists on that one piece of paper, in a locked drawer, in a locked room. Now it was in the air. It is 6:25 p.m., Monday. The Regional Monitoring Services duty supervisor called our office directly at 6:19. This is the first time in my 11 years at this desk that a supervisor-level contact from that office has called us without a prior written request passing through 2 intermediary desks and a routing form. She identified herself by title only and asked 3 questions in immediate sequence without waiting for me to finish answering the previous one. First, whether we had confirmed that any of the reported reference numbers matched our own internal scheduling records. I told her we had confirmed 2 matches at that point, both verified against physical sheets in our archive drawer. Second, whether our scheduling records for the matched entries existed in any digital format, any database, any networked computer, any cloud storage service, any email attachment, any photograph taken for any purpose. I told her they did not. Our pre-2021 records are physical only, typed or handwritten on paper. Filed in the cabinet, never scanned, never photographed, never transmitted digitally by any method at any time. Third, whether anyone other than station personnel had had physical access to that cabinet in the previous 30 days. I checked the building access log while she remained on the line. No visitors to the back room. No maintenance workers, no inspectors, no deliveries requiring access past the front desk area. I reported this. She said a team from the monitoring service would arrive at our office Tuesday morning. She used the word team, not technician, not representative, not liaison. 7 receiving stations were now reporting the signal. 2 new reports had arrived during my telephone call with the supervisor, relayed through the cooperative's evening coordinator, both from operators north of Nehalem, both describing identical characteristics, both providing reference numbers I had not yet had time to cross-check against our files. The supervisor thanked me and ended the call without further comment or instruction. It is 9:30 p.m., Monday. I want to relay what a woman in Oceanside told the cooperative's evening coordinator at approximately 8:50 tonight, because her report represents something new. She is not a radio operator. She is not a member of the cooperative. She does not own a shortwave receiver or any specialized equipment. She called because her kitchen radio, a small consumer AM unit sitting on the counter beside the stove, ordinarily tuned to a music station, had begun producing what she described as someone reading a television guide, but for radio. She said she had been washing dishes from her evening meal when she noticed the music had stopped and the voice had begun. She changed the station 3 times using the dial on the front of the unit. Each frequency she landed on was carrying the same content. She unplugged the radio from the wall outlet. The audio continued for approximately 30 seconds after she removed the cord, then faded gradually to silence. She waited a minute. She plugged it back in. Normal programming from the music station resumed for several minutes. Then the formatted content returned, replacing the music mid-song without any audible transition. She asked whether there was a power grid issue in her area. The coordinator told her he had no information about a power grid issue. This is the first report we have received of the signal appearing on a consumer AM receiver tuned to a standard commercial broadcast frequency. Every prior report involved dedicated shortwave equipment operated by licensed or experienced hobbyists. 9 receiving stations were now confirmed in the cooperative's formal count. The AM report remained unverified and uncounted in their official tally, but the coordinator flagged it for the technical committee's Tuesday morning session. The woman said the content did not distress her. She said it was just odd, and she wanted someone to know. She said the voice was calm, almost pleasant, and that it sounded like it belonged on the air. That last detail matches every prior description without exception. It is 11:10 p.m., Monday. I performed the standard evening transmitter check at 9:45, same as every night I am on shift. I read the output meter, confirmed the broadcast frequency was clean of spurious emissions, logged the wattage, and inspected the standby generator's fuel level through the sight glass. On Monday evening, every reading was entirely normal. Output steady at the manufacturer's rated level, frequency clean across the monitored bandwidth, generator fuel at 81% of capacity, cooling system temperature nominal, well within the acceptable operating window. I logged the readings on the maintenance sheet and initialed the entry. The tower warning light was visible from the east window of the office, blinking red at its standard 3-second interval against the overcast sky. I am noting these details because this is the last transmitter check I performed that returned entirely expected values across every measured parameter. Tuesday's check did not. Wednesday's was worse. But Monday at 9:45, everything about our broadcast equipment was functioning within its design tolerances. I also want to note clearly that at no point during Monday did our own monitoring receivers, the 2 units we keep active at the front desk for continuous signal verification, produce any anomalous audio whatsoever. Whatever was reaching the cooperative's operators across the region, whatever was coming through the Manzanita Library's unpowered unit, whatever the Oceanside woman heard from her kitchen counter, it was not appearing on our own equipment at any time during the day. I noted this in my shift log at close of observations. No anomalous reception at relay desk as of 21:45. Signal appears confined to external receivers in the cooperative network. Own equipment unaffected. That statement was accurate on Monday night. I have no correction to make to it for Monday. The correction applies to a later day. 11 stations confirmed as the cooperative's volunteer closed the Monday log at midnight and handed coverage to the overnight shift. It is 7:15 a.m. Tuesday. I did not sleep well Monday night, though I went home to Wheeler at 11 and tried. I arrived back at the office at 6:45 Tuesday morning. The overnight coordinator, we share the desk in rotating shifts, had left his handover note clipped to the side of the desk monitor in his usual position. The note listed 4 items. The first 3 were routine matters, a callback number for a parts supplier regarding a capacitor we had on order, a reminder about a scheduled maintenance window Wednesday afternoon, and a standard weather advisory for the coast. The 4th item was not routine. It read, 14 stations reporting as of 0300. Cooperative has opened a dedicated logging channel for this event. Fisheries Service Duty Officer called twice between midnight and 4 a.m., requesting confirmation that the cabinet has not been accessed overnight. Confirmed building locked, alarm set, no access recorded, no issues. 14 stations. The number had more than doubled overnight while I was home attempting to sleep. I called the cooperative's morning coordinator at 7:10. She confirmed 14 receiving stations distributed across a geographic spread from Astoria in the north to Lincoln City in the south. Approximately 140 miles of coastline. All reporting the same structured audio content. Program scheduling data, 6-digit reference numbers, a neutral and unhurried voice. Some of the reported reference numbers matched entries in our archive. Some matched records held by other cooperative member stations along the coast. Some matched nothing that anyone in the network had yet been able to identify or attribute to any source. She added that 3 operators had attempted to record the signal simultaneously during the overnight hours, and that their recordings appeared to contain different content from each other. Different program titles, different reference numbers, different scheduling sequences, despite being captured at the same moment on the same frequency from locations within 40 miles of one another. She described this finding as highly irregular and said it would be raised at the technical committee's emergency session scheduled for 9 a.m. 14 confirmed stations. one at 11:40 yesterday morning. It is 9:05 a.m. Tuesday. The Fisheries Monitoring Service technician arrived at the Manzanita Library at 8:50, according to a call I received from the library staff member at 9:02. She reported that he examined the unpowered receiver for approximately 20 minutes using visual inspection and handheld instruments. He confirmed the unit had no power connection to any source, no battery installed or present in the housing, no antenna lead attached. The connector remained capped with the same electrical tape the staff member had applied 9 days earlier. He confirmed that the unit was producing audio from its speaker at low but clearly intelligible volume. She said he used a handheld spectrum analyzer to measure the electromagnetic environment immediately surrounding the unit and found no external broadcast signal of sufficient strength to induce audio output in an unpowered receiver chassis at that location. His preliminary finding, as the staff member relayed it to me, and I note this is her paraphrase of his verbal statement, placing it at 2 removes from his original language, was that the audio being produced by the unit could not be accounted for by any electromagnetic coupling mechanism he was equipped to test for in the field. He told her he would need to remove the unit for controlled laboratory examination and placed an orange compliance tag on its front panel. He instructed her not to touch the library's other 2 receivers until the monitoring service team had completed their broader assessment later that morning. 2 of the overnight operators had independently described a secondary characteristic of the audio that daytime reporters had not noted or had not thought to mention. The voice was reading scheduling data in an order that corresponded exactly to the original broadcast sequence as it would have aired. Monday through Saturday, first program to last, morning slot to evening slot, top of the typed sheet to bottom. Not alphabetical, not random, not grouped by category. Sequential, as typed, as filed, as it existed on paper in a drawer in a locked cabinet. The NetArts operator verified this against his own memory of a program he had listened to regularly several years ago and confirmed the time slot was correct. The ordering implied familiarity not just with the data but with the physical layout of the documents themselves. It is 10:40 a.m., Tuesday. The monitoring service team arrived at our relay office at 10:32. 3 people stepped through the front door in quick succession. 2 carried hard-sided equipment cases of a kind I did not recognize. Not standard broadcast maintenance gear, not the soft tool bags our own technicians use. The 3rd carried a clipboard with a pre-printed chain of custody form already partially filled out, and a small digital camera hanging from a strap around his wrist. They identified themselves by title only: a signals engineer, a field analyst, and an administrative liaison. The liaison asked to see the cabinet immediately without preliminary conversation. I took them to the back room. He asked me to open the top drawer while the signals engineer positioned a flat gray instrument, approximately the size of a hardcover book, featureless except for a single green indicator light, on the table beside the cabinet. He did not explain its function, and I did not ask. I opened the drawer. The liaison asked me to count the folders aloud. I counted 6 manila folders, tabbed Monday through Saturday, all present in correct sequence. He asked me to remove Monday's folder and open it flat on the table. I did. The typed schedule sheet was inside, unchanged from my Monday inspection. He photographed it. We continued through the week: Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. All 6 sheets present, all matching my memory. Reference numbers intact. Program titles legible in the same typeface we have used for years. Nothing appeared altered, removed, or inserted. The liaison completed his chain of custody form noting the time, 10:38 a.m., and the condition, complete, consistent with station's prior description, no visible alteration. He asked me to sign alongside his notation. I signed. Then the signals engineer asked whether we maintained a second copy of these schedules anywhere on the premises or elsewhere. A backup set, a carbon, a photocopy kept at home. I told him we did not. These were the originals and the only copies in existence. He looked at the liaison without speaking. The liaison placed a tamper-evident adhesive seal across the top drawer's seam and asked me not to open it again without first calling the monitoring service's direct number. I agreed. 18 stations confirmed. It is 1:15 p.m., Tuesday. The cooperative's afternoon coordinator called at 12:50 with 2 items from the technical committee's emergency session that morning. First, The committee had issued an internal advisory to all member stations instructing operators currently receiving the anomalous signal to cease all attempts at audio recording until further notice. The stated reason, as the coordinator read it to me from the advisory text, was concern that recording equipment connected to affected receivers might be introducing what they termed an unpredictable feedback variable in the reception environment. He said the committee had not elaborated on what that phrase meant in practical terms. Several operators had already expressed strong objection to the instruction, since recording was the only available method of documentation. 3 had formally refused to comply and stated they would continue recording regardless. Their call signs were noted for individual follow-up. Second, 2 operators, one in Garibaldi, one north of Manzanita, had reported that after recording the signal for extended periods, their subsequent playback of those recordings did not match what they remembered hearing during the live session. One operator estimated he had heard 22 distinct program entries read aloud during a 40-minute monitoring window, but his recording of that identical window contained only 9 entries when played back. The other described a similar discrepancy in quantity, but was unable to assign specific numbers to it. The committee flagged both reports for the monitoring service, but had not received any acknowledgement or response as of the noon hour. I noted this in my shift log without further comment. I did not know what framework to apply to a recording that contains less information than the event it recorded. The coordinator did not offer one either. He simply read what the committee had documented and moved to his next call. 22 stations confirmed in the cooperative's midday update. The geographic distribution remained consistent with the previous count. Coastal, north-south axis. No inland movement detected. It is 4:50 p.m., Tuesday. I performed an unscheduled transmitter check at 4:45, my first use of the monitoring service's 6-hour reporting form. The form is pre-printed with blank fields for output level in watts, frequency deviation in cycles, reflected power ratio, and system temperature in degrees. I filled each field using our standard instrumentation. Output level was 3% below the manufacturer's rated value for this transmitter at this installation. Frequency deviation was within published tolerance. Reflected power was nominal, indicating normal antenna coupling. System temperature was 2 degrees above the midpoint of the normal operating range, within the acceptable window but positioned at its upper boundary rather than at center where it usually sits. I logged all 4 values on the form, signed the entry, and faxed the completed page to the number the signals engineer had provided. 3% below rated output is not, by itself, a cause for concern or action. Transmitters drift for a dozen ordinary reasons: ambient temperature changes, atmospheric moisture loading the antenna, component aging, minor impedance variations at the feed point. The monitoring service's liaison, before his team departed the building at 1:50 that afternoon, had left one additional document in our station file. A printed notice whose operative portion stated that until further notice, KQWL 1620 AM, Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network, was formally requested to maintain its current broadcast schedule without alteration of any kind, and to notify the monitoring service immediately by telephone if any unscheduled content appeared in our broadcast output that we had not originated from our own studio. I filed the notice in the front desk folder where we keep active regulatory correspondence. I understood what it said. I did not yet fully understand what scenario it was anticipating. A dental office in Tillamook reported that afternoon that its telephone hold music system, a sealed plastic box containing a single memory chip, no antenna connection, no network interface, had stopped playing its programmed loop and was instead producing the formatted scheduling audio to every caller placed on hold. 29 devices by the count I was given, though the coordinator noted that 2 of them could not be matched to any operator on the roster. It is 7:20 p.m., Tuesday. For the record, before I continue, some people are saying the signal has reached emergency service frequencies: Coast Guard, fire dispatch, medical transport. It has not. Those channels are clean. I confirmed it myself with the county coordination net and the hospital's communications office this evening. Whatever this is, it has not touched the frequencies we would need if it got worse. I am holding on to that. Separately, a school custodian at the elementary building in Garibaldi called our office at 6:55. He said he was locking up the building for the evening and had paused in the main hallway because he heard audio coming from the ceiling-mounted intercom speakers. The school's intercom is a completely closed system. Internal speakers wired to an office console through dedicated cabling run inside the walls. No external antenna, no broadcast reception capability of any kind. It is used exclusively for morning announcements and periodic emergency drills. The console was powered off. He verified this by checking the switch position in the front office. Despite this, a voice was coming through the hallway speakers at very low volume. Barely above a whisper, he said, but clearly intelligible in the empty corridor. He listened for 2 or 3 minutes. A voice reading program scheduling data. He called us because his neighbor had mentioned something about unusual radio signals earlier in the week. It is 11:05 p.m., Tuesday. I performed the scheduled evening transmitter check at 9:45 and the second 6-hour check immediately after, logging both on separate forms as the monitoring service requested. The 9:45 reading showed output 4% below the rated level. System temperature, 3 degrees above the normal operating midpoint. Both values remain within the published acceptable tolerance for our equipment, but both are measurably worse than the afternoon's figures, and the direction of change has been consistent across every reading since Monday evening. Downward for output, upward for temperature. I logged them. I faxed both forms to the monitoring service number. Delivery was confirmed by the fax machine's printed receipt. At 10:15, the Fisheries Monitoring Service duty officer called. The same individual I had spoken with Monday. He asked a question I did not anticipate and have not stopped considering since. He asked whether anyone, any listener, any cooperative member, anyone at all, had called our office to confirm that what they were currently hearing on our broadcast frequency matched what we were actually transmitting from our studio. I told him no one had. We were running our normal evening schedule and no listener had reported anything unusual in our output. He said that was good. He said he was asking as a routine matter. He thanked me and terminated the call. I sat at the desk for some time after hanging up. His question implied a scenario I had not previously allowed myself to consider, that the signal, which was inserting correctly formatted scheduling content into dead air and idle channels across the region, might at some point attempt to appear within an active broadcast. Within our active broadcast. That our listeners might hear something coming from this frequency that we did not put there. I checked our output on the desk monitor at 10:20. Clean, our programming, our recorded segments, our silence between them. I checked again at 11. Clean. I wrote in my shift log, request independent listener confirmation of output match. First priority Wednesday morning. The count was near 40 now. I had begun writing the figures in pencil in the margin of my log, rather than in the log itself, though I could not have told you why. Each new report described the same neutral voice reading numbers that should not exist outside locked rooms. It is 6:50 a.m., Wednesday. I arrived at the office at 6:30 after approximately 3 hours of sleep that I would not describe as restful. The overnight coordinator's handover note ran 2 full pages in his tight, small handwriting, the longest note he has left in the 4 years we have shared the desk rotation. The overnight note put the count somewhere past 60 by 4 a.m. The coordinator had written the figure, and then, below it, a second smaller number in parentheses that did not match, with no explanation for the gap. 12 additional AM band reports arrived overnight, all from consumer-grade radios in private homes tuned to different commercial broadcast stations along the coast. The signal was no longer confined to a single frequency or even a single band. It was appearing across multiple frequencies simultaneously, inserting itself consistently during gaps in regular programming, between songs, between news segments, in the brief passages of dead air that exist naturally in any broadcast day if you listen for them. The overnight coordinator underlined one sentence in his note with 2 heavy strokes of his pen. It is arriving as correctly formatted content. He meant that no automation system at any commercial station along the coast had flagged the insertions as anomalous. The signal was not triggering overmodulation alerts, not tripping dead air violation detectors, not registering on programs log reconciliation software as an unscheduled interruption. It was, in every technical metric these systems measured, behaving as though it had been scheduled by the station's own traffic department, as though it belonged in the program log. Clipped to the second page of the note, I found a faxed notice from the Polar Research Logistics Body, the first communication our office had received directly from that body rather than through the Fisheries Service liaison. The notice confirmed that no transmission had originated from their Southern Hemisphere installation on any frequency currently affected by the anomaly. Their antenna array remained physically disconnected. The notice closed with one instruction printed in bold type: do not alter, relocate, or dispose of any physical scheduling records at your facility until further notice from this office. The word dispose unsettled me in a way I could not immediately articulate. Nobody had suggested disposing of anything. Nobody had raised destruction as a possibility. Yet someone felt it necessary to prohibit it in writing. It is 9:20 a.m., Wednesday. My first action of the working morning, before opening any log or returning any call, was to telephone the retired teacher in Wheeler, whose number I keep on a card beside the desk for signal verification purposes. He confirmed that our 7 a.m. programming had matched his reception perfectly, every segment in its correct position, no anomalous content on our frequency. Our broadcast was clean, at least as received at his location 4 miles from the transmitter. Then I went to the back room. I needed a transmitter tube specification sheet from the third drawer, an unrelated maintenance matter, but while I was in the room, I noted that the tamper-evident seal the monitoring service had placed across the top drawer remained intact, unbroken, its adhesive undisturbed. I retrieved the tube sheet from the third drawer and closed it. Then I decided to check the top drawer. The Polar Research Body's fax had specifically referenced our physical scheduling records, and I wanted to verify the contents were undisturbed before the monitoring service team arrived for their expected Tuesday return visit. I broke the seal, I opened the drawer. Monday's folder was in its position. I pulled it partially out and confirmed the typed sheet was present and unchanged. Tuesday's folder likewise present and intact. I pulled Wednesday's folder. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the same size as our schedule sheets, the same off-white stock from the same supplier, the same weight between my fingers, but the sheet was blank, completely blank, no typed program names, no time slot designations, no reference numbers, no text of any kind. I checked Thursday's folder, a blank sheet. Friday, blank. Saturday, blank. 4 folders, 4 sheets of the correct paper, all empty of content. Monday and Tuesday remained exactly as I had seen them Monday afternoon, and as the monitoring service had documented Tuesday morning. I stood in that room without moving for what I estimate was 2 full minutes. The cabinet had been locked. The combination had not been shared. The room door had been locked. The building alarm had been armed. The overnight coordinator's note made no reference to entering the back room at any point during his shift. The count passed 60 overnight. I say passed because the coordinator could no longer give me a single firm number. 3 of the new entries could not be matched to a real operator, and 1 station appeared to have reported itself twice from 2 different addresses. It is 11:30 a.m., Wednesday. The monitoring service team arrived at 10:50, augmented by 2 additional personnel I had not seen during their Tuesday visit. They went directly to the back room and closed the door. I was not invited to accompany them. They remained inside for 40 minutes. At 11:25, the administrative liaison emerged and asked me to sit at the front desk. He stood across from me and communicated 3 pieces of information in a flat, measured tone that did not vary between items. First, the blank sheets found in the cabinet were confirmed by their materials analyst to be the same paper stock as our original type schedules. Same manufacturer, same production weight, same slight off-white tint consistent with our known supplier's output. Second, the monitoring service was formally reclassifying this event from its current Category 2 designation to Category 4, which he described as a coordinated information loss event requiring multi-agency response. I had never heard that category name. I did not know their system extended to 4. Third, our station was not the only facility affected by the loss of records. Overnight, 14 other cooperative member stations distributed along the coast had reported that their own physical scheduling documents, paper files, handwritten program logs, typed reference sheets, had been found in states ranging from partially incomplete to entirely blank. 14 stations discovering record loss, the same number that had been receiving the signal as of the cooperative's 3 a.m. count on Tuesday. The liaison stated those two numbers in sequence without drawing a verbal connection between them. He simply said one and then the other, and then moved to his next procedural point. I am reporting them in the same manner he presented them. The harbor master's office at Garibaldi had separately contacted the cooperative that same morning regarding a matter they did not initially associate with the signal. Their vessel scheduling board, a large physical whiteboard mounted on the office wall listing berth assignments, arrival times, departure windows, and pilot allocations for the current week, had been completely erased overnight. The harbor master arrived at 6 a.m. Wednesday to find every notation gone, the whiteboard perfectly clean, the dry erase markers lined up in their tray, and the office door locked from outside exactly as he had left it. It is 2:05 p.m. Wednesday. The monitoring service team departed the building at 12:40, carrying the 4 blank sheets sealed in individual clear evidence bags, labeled with case numbers I was not shown clearly enough to read. Monday's and Tuesday's typed sheets remained in the cabinet in their original folders. The team did not explain why those 2 days were left intact when the others were taken, or why they had been spared whatever process had blanked the rest. Before leaving, the individual who carried no visible identification, who had not spoken to me directly at any point during either visit, handed a single printed page to the liaison, who then handed it to me across the front desk. It was a formal advisory addressed to all relay network affiliates operating within what the document called the affected corridor. I will relay its operative instruction as precisely as I can reproduce it from memory, as the original is now filed, and I do not wish to leave the desk to retrieve it. Effective immediately, no station in the Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network was to broadcast any scheduling information, program listings, time slot data, or internal reference numbers of any kind over the air. All routine schedule announcements were suspended without a stated resumption date. Listeners requesting program information were to be directed to contact their local station by telephone only. The advisory was signed by the Regional Monitoring Services Director, a title and a level of authority I had not previously seen attached to any correspondence regarding our operations. I complied immediately. Our 2 p.m. schedule announcement, which I would normally have read from the typed sheet at the top of the hour, was replaced with silence, 30 seconds of dead air where the listing would have been. I monitored our output through those 30 seconds on the desk receiver. The silence was clean. Nothing filled it, nothing attempted to fill it. At the veterinary clinic in Bay City, the automated appointment reminder system had begun reading scheduling data to pet owners instead of their appointment details. 11 confused return calls in 90 minutes before the office manager disconnected the unit entirely. The cooperative's afternoon count stood somewhere near 80. The committee had stopped reading the number aloud with confidence. The coordinator gave it to me with a pause before it, the way you say a figure you expect to be wrong. It is 5:40 p.m., Wednesday. I need to address a claim that has spread since Tuesday evening, because it has now reached people outside the cooperative who have no other source of verified information about this event. Several online forums and at least 2 local social media groups are stating, with apparent certainty, that the signal has been identified as a military communications test, held back from the public, confirmed privately to selected officials, while denied in public statements. I ran that claim down the way I have run down every rumor this week. And what I found is worse than the rumor. It is not a military test. The Defense Liaison Desk confirmed that in a single sentence, and I have no reason to doubt them. But when I asked that same desk who was claiming the signal, which agency, which body, anyone at all, the officer stopped. Then he said, "No one has claimed it. Everything we monitor belongs to someone. This does not. A test would mean someone is doing this deliberately, to a schedule, with a purpose we could eventually be told. It would mean there is a party we could ask to stop. There is no such party. That is the correction I have for you tonight, and I would rather have been able to hand you the rumor." Separately, the cooperative's technical committee completed their second emergency session at 4:30 and issued a revised classification framework. Under the new protocol, the confirmed device count would henceforth include any device producing the formatted audio regardless of whether that device possesses any conventional signal reception capability. The distinction between receivers and non-receivers was formally dissolved. The Polar Research Body's representative attended the session by telephone and asked a single question: whether any closed system device producing the audio had been manufactured after 2015. The committee had not collected manufacturing dates. He asked them to begin doing so immediately. He did not explain the relevance of that threshold year. It is 8:40 p.m., Wednesday. A woman in NetArts reached the cooperative's evening coordinator at 7:50 with a report that does not fit any category the committee has established, even under their expanded definition. She said her baby monitor, a small white plastic unit positioned on the dresser in her infant daughter's room, purchased second-hand approximately 2 years ago, had begun producing a second layer of audio beneath the normal ambient sound of the nursery. She described it as a voice reading underneath her daughter's breathing. Not louder than the breathing, not replacing it, layered beneath it, as though the voice were coming from slightly further away than the crib, but through the same speaker at the same moment. She said she listened for approximately 3 minutes before she identified what the voice was saying. Program titles, time slots, numbers read in groups of 6 digits. She unplugged the monitor from the wall outlet and carried her daughter to the master bedroom for the remainder of the night. The monitor is a closed analog audio device with a transmission range of approximately 40 feet between the nursery unit and the parent receiver. It contains no tuning mechanism, no frequency selection capability, and no antenna beyond the short molded wire integrated into its plastic casing during manufacture. It is designed to transmit on a single fixed frequency at very low power to a paired receiver and to do nothing else. The cooperative counted it. The count was somewhere past 90 now. I had stopped writing the exact figures in my log entirely. They changed faster than I could record them, and I no longer trusted that each number stood for one device rather than one report of a device, or one report of a report. The evening coordinator relayed this report to me at 8:15, and I noted it in my log. She also mentioned something from earlier in the day that I had failed to include in my notes. The retired teacher in Wheeler, during my morning verification call, had mentioned in passing that his neighbor's porch radio, a battery-powered portable unit hanging from a nail beside the front door, had been producing the formatted audio continuously since Monday afternoon. The neighbor had not reported it to anyone because she did not find it objectionable. She told the retired teacher it reminded her of how radio used to sound when someone was actually speaking to you through it, rather than just filling time. He relayed this without commentary. I am doing the same. It is 11:20 p.m. Wednesday. I performed the 9:45 p.m. transmitter check per my standard routine and logged the readings on the monitoring service's 6-hour form immediately afterward. Output levels stood at 7% below the manufacturer's rated value for our installation. System temperature was 5 degrees above the normal operating midpoint, which places it outside the acceptable tolerance window for the first time since I began logging under the service's enhanced monitoring protocol. I circled the temperature figure on the form with red ink as their instructions require for any out-of-tolerance measurement. I faxed the completed form to their designated number. The machine confirmed transmission. The output decline across the 3 days of measurement now reads as follows. Rated level on Monday evening, 3% below on Tuesday afternoon, 4% below Tuesday evening, and 7% below now on Wednesday night. Each figure is within the range of normal seasonal drift if considered entirely in isolation from the others. I am considering each in isolation. That is the only responsible interpretation available to me without diagnostic equipment I do not possess. At 10:15, I attempted to reach the monitoring service's after-hours telephone line to discuss the temperature reading verbally. A recorded message informed me the after-hours desk was experiencing unusually high call volume and directed non-emergency matters to the fax number I had already used. I faxed a brief supplementary note about the temperature. At 11:15, the telephone rang. The Oceanside woman, the same resident who reported her kitchen radio on Monday evening, was calling again. She said the content coming through her radio had changed. On Monday and Tuesday, the voice had read program titles and time slots she did not recognize at all. Tonight, it was reading titles she knew, shows she remembered from this station. She named 2 specifically. Both were accurate, both from archive seasons, both verified against records that now exist only on our Monday and Tuesday sheets or not at all. She said hearing familiar program names read back in that calm voice felt like someone reading her own memory to her in sequence. She said she was not going to turn the radio off. She said it was company in the kitchen. It is 7:40 a.m., Thursday. I arrived at the office at 6:30 to find the overnight coordinator absent from the desk. Not off shift, The shift runs until 7. Not in the transmitter room, I checked. Not in the back room, I checked. Not in the small kitchen area or the washroom. Gone. His jacket remained hanging from the hook beside the front door. His ceramic coffee mug sat on the desk half full of cold black coffee with a film forming on its surface. His shift handover note was clipped to the monitor in its usual position, but consisted of only 2 lines of handwriting, the second of which trailed off into an unfinished word. The note read, "Count at 0400, 131 confirmed." Polar Research Rep called at 0320, asked whether the sentence does not complete. The pen, his personal pen, a blue ballpoint he keeps in his shirt pocket, was on the floor beside the desk chair, approximately where it would land if released from a relaxed hand without being set down deliberately. The chair was pushed back from the desk at a slight angle, as though he had stood up quickly or been pulled upright. The building's alarm system was still armed in its overnight mode, which means he exited through the front door, which rearms automatically after a 30-second delay. I called his home telephone. No answer after 12 rings. I called his mobile number. It rang through to an automated voicemail greeting. I left a brief message asking him to call the office. I contacted the cooperative's morning coordinator. She had not heard from him and had received no communication from him after his 3:22 a.m. log entry. I reported his unexplained absence to the monitoring service's morning desk at 8:05. They recorded the information and asked whether the overnight shift log was complete. It was not. The final time-stamped entry was 3:22 a.m. Nearly 4 hours of the overnight shift remain entirely unlogged and unaccounted for. His car was still in the parking area beside the building. The cabinet seal was intact. The transmitter room was locked from the inside, requiring the building key I carry. It is 10:05 a.m. Thursday. The monitoring service team arrived at 9:30 with 5 personnel, 2 more than their previous visits. The administrative liaison broke the numbered seal on the cabinet's top drawer and opened it while I observed from the doorway. Monday's folder remained in position, typed sheet intact. Tuesday's folder the same. The Wednesday through Saturday positions, which had contained blank sheets on my Wednesday morning inspection, sheets subsequently removed as evidence by the team that same afternoon, now contained new blank sheets. Fresh blanks, filed in the correct folders, in the correct sequence, same paper stock, same weight, same off-white color. The liaison confirmed that no member of his team had returned to the building between their Wednesday departure at 12:40 and this morning's arrival. The overnight coordinator's incomplete note made no reference to the cabinet or the back room. The replacement blanks had appeared in a sealed drawer in a locked cabinet in a locked room inside an alarmed building during a period when the only person present had vanished without completing his shift note. The liaison sealed the drawer with a new numbered seal, photographed it, and asked me to countersign his log entry. I signed. He then informed me that of the 14 cooperative member stations that had reported record alterations on Wednesday, 11 had now reported a second and more severe change. Specifically, records that had been found blank on Wednesday were now missing entirely. The blank paper itself was gone. Folders that had contained blank sheets were now empty. In 3 cases, the folders themselves had been removed from the filing systems. One station north of Astoria reported that an entire drawer of their archive cabinet, 3 full years of program scheduling records, had been found completely empty Thursday morning. No paper, no folders, no hanging frames, no debris. As though the drawer had never been used. No forced entry reported at any location, no security systems triggered. The liaison said the event was no longer being classified as a signal anomaly within their framework. Revised terminology was under discussion at what he called a national monitoring tier. The morning count was still being given as 131, but the replacement coordinator had drawn a question mark beside the figure in the log and written a single word underneath it. Counting what? It is 1:30 p.m., Thursday. The Polar Research Logistics Body's representative arrived at our office at 12:55. He came alone in a rented sedan, carrying a single dark leather briefcase with brass clasps. He identified himself by title only, Field Liaison, Northern Hemisphere Signal Coordination, and did not offer his name or any documentation of his authority beyond a laminated card he showed briefly and returned to his jacket pocket. He asked to see the cabinet. I took him to the back room. He examined the monitoring service's numbered seal closely without touching it, leaning in to read the serial number printed along its edge. Then he straightened and asked me a question no one from the monitoring service had thought to pose: whether the 6-digit reference numbers used in our scheduling system were assigned to new program entries sequentially or by some other method such as random generation or categorical grouping. I told him they were strictly sequential. Each new entry receives the next integer in a continuous series that has been maintained since the numbering system's adoption. He asked what the highest reference number currently assigned in our system was. I told him I would need to check the Monday sheet, as it was the most recent intact record. He asked me to check. I broke the monitoring service seal, opened the drawer, and examined Monday's typed sheet. I noted in the log that I had broken a numbered seal without the monitoring service present, and the reason, and the time. I did not want that break to become one more thing no one could account for later. The highest number listed was 447812. He wrote this figure in a small notebook he produced from the briefcase. Then he looked at me directly and told me, in the same level tone one might use to report a barometric pressure reading, that the formatted audio signal as currently being monitored at his body's southern hemisphere installation was reading reference numbers in the range of 449,000. Numbers our station had not yet assigned, numbers that would, if the sequential system continued as designed, correspond to program entries we had not yet created for broadcast dates we had not yet reached. I asked him what that meant. He said he was not in a position to offer interpretation. He said his role was to confirm the numerical range and report it to the multi-agency coordination group. By afternoon, the number was somewhere past 150. I am giving you a range because a range is the most honest thing I have left. It is 4:15 p.m., Thursday. The grocery in Wheeler, the one that opens at 7 each morning with the same woman behind the register, the same thermos of coffee on the counter beside her elbow, closed at 2 p.m. today without announcement. She called the cooperative at 1:45 to explain. The store's overhead intercom system, a unit used exclusively for paging staff between the stockroom and the front counter, had been producing the formatted audio since approximately mid-morning. She noticed it first around 10 when the store was quiet between customers. A voice reading program titles and time slot designations through the ceiling-mounted speakers at conversational volume. She turned the intercom console off at the switch. The audio continued without interruption or change in volume. She located the circuit breaker for the intercom system on the electrical panel in the stockroom and switched it to the off position. The audio continued for approximately 40 seconds after the breaker was cut, then faded over several seconds to silence. She left the breaker off. An hour later, needing to page her stock clerk about a delivery, she switched the breaker back on. The scheduling audio resumed immediately at the same volume and the same point in its sequence, as though it had been continuing silently during the interval and she had simply reconnected the speaker to an ongoing stream. Customers were asking her about it. Most seemed curious rather than alarmed. One regular, a retired fisherman who visits every morning for coffee and the newspaper, stood in the cereal aisle for 20 minutes with his head tilted slightly upward toward the nearest speaker, wearing an expression she described to the cooperative as recognition, not confusion, recognition, as though he were hearing something he had been expecting without knowing he was expecting it. She closed the store early because she could not provide customers with an explanation, and because the sound, she said, had begun to feel less like a malfunction and more like something the building had decided to do with or without her permission. I will not give you a number for this hour. The geographic spread of reports now extended north into Clatsop County, south past Newport into Lincoln County, and inland to the full 15-mile boundary of the monitoring service's designated corridor. It is 7:10 p.m., Thursday. The monitoring service's regional director issued a formal public advisory at 6 p.m., distributed by fax to all cooperative member stations and all emergency service coordination points within the affected corridor. I received our copy at 6:15, and I will relay its operative instruction as closely as I can to the language used. All residents within the affected corridor, defined in the advisory as the coastal region extending from Astoria south to Newport and 15 miles inland from the shoreline, are asked to disconnect any non-essential audio-producing equipment in their homes and places of business until further notice. The advisory lists specific categories: radios of all types, intercom systems, public address installations, telephone hold music devices, automated answering and voice menu systems, baby monitors, and any device incorporating a speaker that is not specifically required for emergency communication or life safety purposes. Systems operated by emergency services, hospital paging, fire dispatch, Coast Guard coordination are exempt from the instruction, but are to be continuously monitored for anomalous content and any deviation reported immediately through established emergency channels. The advisory states that this measure is precautionary in nature and that no health risk to residents has been identified or is suspected at this time. I am reading that characterization as it was written. I note without comment the progression of official language applied to this event across the 5 days since Monday morning. The coordinator told me at 6:45 that the rate of new reports had not decreased following the advisory's distribution. People were still calling. Several expressed more curiosity than concern. One caller in Pacific City asked whether there was a way to tune in more clearly. She referred him to the advisory's language. The Oceanside woman has not called since Wednesday night. I do not know whether her kitchen radio is still on. I do not know whether she received the advisory and chose to comply with it, or whether she chose the voice over the silence that compliance would bring. It is 9:05 p.m. Thursday. I performed the scheduled transmitter check at 9 p.m. Output level stood at 11% below the manufacturer's rated value. System temperature 8 degrees above the normal operating midpoint, well outside the acceptable tolerance window, and continuing to move in the same direction it has moved at every measurement since Tuesday afternoon. The rate of decline is no longer consistent with any seasonal, mechanical, or environmental explanation available to me from my training or my 11 years of operational experience at this facility. I logged the figures, I faxed the form, the monitoring services after-hours line did not answer. I attempted the call 3 times across a 20-minute span. On the 3rd attempt, the line connected. I heard the click of a connection establishing, but produced no voice, no automated greeting, no recorded message, no hold tone, only silence, steady and featureless, for approximately 30 seconds before the line disconnected itself. I faxed the out-of-tolerance report to both numbers in my file and noted in the shift log that verbal confirmation could not be obtained. At 9:03 p.m., 3 minutes after completing the transmitter check, I heard something from the desk monitor that I need to describe precisely. Our 9 p.m. programming was a pre-recorded marine weather summary 7 minutes in duration, followed by scheduled dead air lasting 3 minutes before our 9:10 segment. The weather summary concluded at 9:02 on schedule. The dead air began. And in that dead air, for a duration I estimate at approximately 40 seconds, the desk monitor produced audio that I did not originate from our studio and did not schedule in our program log. A voice, neutral in tone, unhurried in pace, reading program titles followed by 6-digit reference numbers. Coming from our frequency, leaving our transmitter, appearing in our output, I checked every link in the broadcast chain. No content was scheduled for that window. No entry existed in the automation queue. No audio source was feeding the transmitter input during that period except the silence I had programmed. The voice appeared in our transmission without passing through any equipment I control. At 9:03 it ceased and our 9:10 segment commenced on schedule as though nothing had occupied the intervening seconds. For the first time since Monday, the signal was not arriving at receivers. It was departing from our transmitter. It is 7:15 a.m., Friday. The replacement overnight coordinator, not the man who disappeared, a different volunteer from the cooperative's roster, left a clean and orderly shift note. No incidents during his hours. No anomalous audio detected on the desk monitor at any point during the night. Transmitter output remained steady at 11% below rated, neither improving nor declining further between his checks. The last count I am willing to stand behind was 219, given just before the logging channel closed for the shift change. There was a number after that. I will get to it. He noted one item at the bottom of his note that requires attention. At 4:12 a.m., the cooperative's logging channel received an entry relayed through a mutual contact from a station located outside the cooperative's network, outside the regional monitoring services jurisdiction, and outside the national border. A foreign amateur operator monitoring a maritime weather frequency had detected the formatted audio on a channel that should have been carrying only automated weather transmissions from a coastal navigation beacon. He reported the same characteristics described by every other observer. A neutral voice reading program scheduling data with 6-digit reference numbers at unhurried pace. The reference numbers he provided to the mutual contact did not match our station's system. They did not match any active cooperative members' numbering. They matched according to a notation added by the cooperative's overnight volunteer after consultation with the archive committee, a numbering format consistent with that used by a public broadcasting affiliate on the northern coast that ceased operations and went permanently off the air more than 3 decades ago. That affiliate's program records, if they survived at all, would exist only in physical paper form in whatever storage arrangement was made at the time of closure. This is the first confirmed report of the formatted audio appearing outside national borders. I am noting it without interpretation or speculation. An unknown and presently uncountable number of additional reports pending from locations where no system exists to receive or tally them. The dish rack beside the kitchen window in Bay City would be dry by now. It has been 6 days. It is 10:30 a.m., Friday. The monitoring service team arrived at 9:45 for what the liaison described, without elaboration, as their final scheduled on-site visit to our facility. He informed me that ongoing monitoring of our station's output and equipment status would henceforth be conducted remotely using data from the faxed forms and from instrumentation I was not told had been installed. Physical inspections of the premises were being suspended effective immediately, pending what he termed reallocation of field resources to other priority sites within the corridor. He did not identify those sites. He acknowledged the seal I had broken on Thursday, logged it without comment, and told me I was free to access the contents at my own discretion going forward. The monitoring service's operational guidance remained in effect. No scheduling data to be broadcast over the air under any circumstances, and carried no stated expiration date. Before departing, I asked him directly whether the formatted audio signal was still being detected as originating from the geographic coordinates of the Polar Research Body's Southern Hemisphere installation. He confirmed that it was. I asked whether any person, agency, or technical investigation had yet identified what was producing it at that location, given that no operational equipment existed there capable of transmission. He said that question was being addressed at a level of classification above his own clearance, and that he could not discuss it further. He extended his hand. I shook it. The team departed at 10:15. At 10:20, I opened the cabinet alone for the first time without any official observer present. Top drawer. Monday's folder. Present. Typed sheet intact and unchanged. Tuesday's folder. Present. Typed sheet intact. Wednesday through Saturday, the folders themselves were gone. Not empty, absent entirely. The hanging file frames that had held them were bare metal rails with nothing suspended from them. I checked the second drawer, which holds the previous 3 months of archived program schedules. Empty, every folder removed, every sheet of paper gone, 90 days of broadcast history erased from physical existence. Third drawer, the long-term archive containing records from the station's earliest years of operation through the present. I opened it knowing already what I would find. Empty, decades of documentation. Everything this station has ever been, in terms of its recorded scheduling history, removed from a locked cabinet in a locked room. What remains in our possession is Monday's sheet and Tuesday's sheet. 2 pages. 2 days out of 31 years. It is 8:43 p.m., Sunday. I have now presented everything I am able to verify from direct observation, copied documents, and confirmed third-party reports. The transmitter check I performed 1 hour ago returned output at 17% below the manufacturer's rated level. The cooling system has begun producing a sound I have not previously heard from this equipment in 11 years of operation. A low, intermittent tone, almost musical in quality, occurring at intervals I have been unable to predict or time consistently. I noted it on the monitoring form. I do not know who will read the form. The fax number provided by the monitoring service no longer produces a connection tone when dialed. The cooperative's logging channel was closed at 6 p.m. Friday and has not reopened. 312 was the number in the final entry before the channel closed. I set it down here because it was the last thing the log recorded, not because I believe it. I no longer know whether that figure was counting devices or whether the devices had begun counting something, and the difference has stopped feeling small to me. No system remains operational to correct it either way. At 3:15 this afternoon, I found a single sheet of paper face down on the floor beneath the cabinet, as though it had slid under the unit at some point and remained there unnoticed. I retrieved it. It is not our paper stock. Heavier weight, slightly yellow with age. A printed institutional header I do not recognize. A name and a location corresponding to no organization I have encountered during this event. The sheet contains a single column of 6-digit numbers written in pencil in a hand that is not mine and not the overnight coordinators and not anyone else whose writing I know from this office. 43 numbers. They are not in our series. Our highest assigned number is 447812, and I have checked it against Monday's sheet twice. Every number on this page begins 449. The range the polar liaison told me the signal was reading from the southern installation on Thursday. The range we had not reached, programs we had not made, for dates we had not yet lived to broadcast. Below the final number, one line of handwritten text reads, "Received complete, cabinet verified empty, proceed to next station." I do not know what this document means. I do not know who produced it or when. I do not know how it came to be beneath furniture in a room that has been inspected repeatedly by trained personnel. I am placing it inside Monday's folder. That is the only folder I have left. The ferry to Garibaldi has not run since Thursday morning. The school intercom has not been reconnected. The pharmacy's automated refill line has not been restored. The library's listening room is closed and the door is locked. The harbor master's scheduling board has not been rewritten. The overnight coordinator has not come back for his jacket. All residents within the affected corridor are advised to suspend use of all audio receiving and audio producing equipment indefinitely, to maintain no physical records of broadcast scheduling in any format, and to report any voice formatted content appearing through any device or system, regardless of whether that device is powered, connected, or believed capable of receiving transmissions. There is no expiration on this guidance. Remain within the perimeter. This is KQWL 11620 AM. Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network.